Alright, how's it going, guys? Just going to go ahead and get started here. So first things first for this upcoming week, well, I guess I should go over the format first. So the format for this video, first thing we're going to go over is the indexes for the week ahead. Then after that, we're going to go over last week's stock performance of the individual stocks that we discussed. And then after that, we're going to go and look at some charts that I might be watching for the week coming up. And before I get started, I do just want to say that this is not financial advice and just financial education. These ideas are to be taken for a grain of salt and not to be acted upon without doing your own research and making decisions on your own for reasons that you decide, not myself. So, starting with SPY here. As you can see, we've had a pretty nice rally off of the October lows. That low put us right at the top of the range that we existed in for the better part of a year, starting back in May of 2022. Well, I mean, really going back to February of 2022 and running all the way to May of 2023. So that low being put in there was not surprising at all that it would hold there. But I think what was a little bit surprising is this kind of euphoric run that we've been on for the last month or so into now what is the top of the range. Up near 460. For continuation here, I think consolidation will have to occur above this previous range high before a push to all-time highs. But if we turn over to QQQ, we see a little bit of a different picture. So with QQQ, that being primarily big tech stocks, which has been leading the market, that's the like Magnificent Seven stocks. These are starting to roll over a little bit from that all-time high range, so it'll be curious to see the kind of divergence that's happening between SPY and QQQ and whether or not QQQ and big tech can keep up that momentum to surge to all-time highs. Heading on over to the small and mid caps, we have IWM. So IWM has really had a pretty lackluster last couple of years. As you can see, we've been trading in this range for, again, basically 2 years at this point, and there really hasn't been much to show for it. But recent strength out of the lows has kind of prompted maybe a little bit more of a push in SPY that does contain some of those smaller companies. This type of participation in IWM might help push us out to all-time highs, and it's important to pay attention to these three in tandem when gauging the health of the entire market. Looking back at last week, one of my primary watches going into the week and holdings going into the week was AFRM. Put in an outside-inside bar setup, which for those of you who don't know is one of my favorite setups. So we were able to enter on that inside day and then let this ride out. And this is a stock I do currently have a position in. We'll see how that plays out going forward, but the strength out of here and the volume coupled with it really just shows how powerful a breakout can be, especially on a growth stock like Firm. Moving right along, we do also have IoT, which was kind of my earnings pick for the week. This isn't something that we'll have every week, obviously, once earnings season is over, but IoT is a company that I'm relatively familiar with. At this point, I've done a fair bit of research on their market strategy, and I've been a big fan of how well they've been growing lately, as well as their push for profitability. And this earnings breakout to all-time highs, I think, is something that we should be watching into the upcoming weeks, but also wanted to mention since this was on my watch list last week, and the performance here has just been great. We also had LMND, Lemonade. Kind of a mixed week last week. Obviously, it ended up being a good week in the end. Winded up pretty green on that position, but some funky price action that definitely could have had people shaken out. I drew my pivot around 1730, and we traded above and below this for a number of days. I think the key takeaway here is wait for those candles to close. A lot of people, I think, would have gotten shaken out on this Friday morning low around 1690 to 1702. Or excuse me, 1660 to 17. But if they had just let that candle close, it would have recognized the strength in small and mid caps, and Lemonade making a full recovery there. We also had ON last week, which is now putting in an outside-inside setup. But the main focus here was just kind of a consolidation, tightening up underneath that 28.929 pivot, which I think should push us up above, maybe a little consolidation here and break before going for that gap at 33, or it just goes straight for it. ON, for those who are unfamiliar, is a shoe brand that is gaining a considerable amount of popularity against other training brands like Nike, Under Armour, and Adidas. Looking forward into the next week, Tesla is another one I traded last week, but I'm looking at it for this week as well. On the weekly, have this pretty significant flag building out. We went inside week to now to a green week. So the confirmation is to the upside. Would have liked to see a close over 244, which would have been the previous week's high. Didn't quite get that, but in any case, I think if we get a consolidation here, as long as we maintain that 232 level and all weaknesses contained there, this is one that could make a pretty fruitful run out of this flag setup that it has going on. Also liked FTDR. A bit of a consolidation here. Reminds me a little bit of Affirm. I don't think it quite has the same power as Affirm, but it is one of my favorite types of setups, which is you have a strong earnings pivot and then an immediate consolidation after that. You don't have these kind of exhaustive runs and then a very broken and loose consolidation. It's a nice pivot, a nice power earnings gap out of that, and then straight into the consolidation without really too much screwing around. This gives a fairly clean risk reward, and there's still meat on the bone to be had, as long as the volume stays on there. Did have a couple more for this week. Let me go ahead and pull those up as well. Sim being one of them. Strong earnings report coming in a couple weeks ago, and now really just trading slightly up and sideways. Obviously would have liked to have seen a cleaner consolidation, but as long as all weakness is held above, or as long as it's contained above 52 or 51, this little pivot that I have drawn out here, I think that this could continue for those highs. Sim historically has been a mover on earnings, and really just a heavy performer since it launched back in 2022. So we'll see what happens with this one. I don't currently have a position here, but these kind of high ADR stocks that have just recently reported, I think that's where a lot of opportunity lies. So I will be focusing primarily on that portion of the market right now. We also had GLD for this week. So GLD is approaching the top of the range. This is, I think if you stretch this back, it's like a 30-year range or something absurd. Maybe a little bit exhaustive into the top of the range at 191, but any consolidation here I think should be taken as a gift. Gold, once it gets hot, once it starts to move, it really can move. So it's important to pay attention to that. And also, my mistake, I didn't mean 40 years, like 10 or 12 years since that previous high. But once gold gets moving, it really can move. So I think it's going to be important to pay attention to that and see kind of how it acts at this level, because the previous 3 times it's rejected heavily. All right, timer's at about 9 minutes 30. Try to keep this one under 10 minutes. That's the previous week in review as well as the week ahead, and just a quick look at the indexes. I hope you guys enjoyed, and subscribe for more.